Hey guys, I'm Kim and you've got Hannah here as well.
Hey.
Basically, we at Belvista Studios are always trying to learn and progress and help improve our craft. And as you see, we do stuff on Instagram, daily tips and insights into what goes on behind in our studio here. And also we do things on LinkedIn and YouTube. And Hannah's been really fantastic at writing our blogs, weekly blogs, and we've been getting really good engagement on them. And I just thought it'd be really good if we could get in and do a behind the scenes of what goes on, about a deeper dive into Hannah's blogs, and just have a chat and kind of, I don't know, I can get more depth and insights, and hopefully that shares with the community more interest and more, I don't know, practical applications or deeper understanding of each of the topics. So we have no idea what we're doing in this chat today, and we're just going to record it and wing it and see what happens. I suppose it will just progress organically. But thank you for watching. And today's topic, or Hannah's blog this week, was about human-centred design. And I know this is freaking awesome, and it's been helping improve our solutions by actually applying it to that initial stage of the project. So Hannah, what is human-centred design?
All right, so yeah, I've completed a course on it recently and done quite a bit of research into how it works and how to do it. And basically, human-centered design is about really putting your user at the heart of your solution. And it may seem like an obvious thing to do, but I know when I was learning about it and doing research about it, just the amount of practical tips that came up, I was just like, wow, I wish I'd done, I did this more in my my working life.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically it's just it's all about the importance of making sure that your user is the real core of your problem that you're solving, and really focusing on how you can make sure that you're designing it for them and you're not just making assumptions or coming up with a solution that may sound awesome or be really great, but making sure that it really works for them as your audience. So yeah, I guess that's how I would describe it.
Cool. So I suppose you did your course and that was through IDEO, hey?
Yes, that's it. It was awesome.
So
yeah, so basically...
Oh, you go.
Oh, sorry, you go. Yeah, it's an awesome course. It basically went through the whole human-centered design theory, the theory behind it, and also went through the different stages. So we can have a chat about that as well. What's involved in the different stages and what you can do to follow through with those stages, I guess.
Cool. Well, I know that just coming to mind now, IDEO is where I learned a lot about this kind of stuff. And what was really cool was that they've literally given everything away for free. So they've given resources like facilitator guides, so that if you want to do your own kind of human-centered design process, whether you're running workshops within your team and stuff, jump onto the IDEO website, because they've just given everything away for free and you don't have to recreate the wheel. So that's really awesome. But coming back to if you're thinking about putting the user or the end user front of mind and really creating something that's actually important to them, what is that about? How can we do
that? So I guess what I got from it was taking the time in the front end to really understand what their day-to-day life is. So not just looking at the problem and thinking, how can we solve that and how can we make it awesome for them, but actually putting yourself in their shoes and really understanding what is the problem or what's the learning that they need and what's their day-to-day experience. So really making sure that you design something that's really fit for them. And there was actually an example that was on the IDEO course that really stuck with me, where I was like, wow, that's so true. So it was about it was an area that had quite a bit of poverty, and children in the area were not accessing the right medical services that they needed.
Yeah.
And basically the IDEO team were trying to figure out, okay, how can we have some sort of clinic or something available for them where parents will take their kids to get the medical services that they need. And you would think potentially it should be closer to where they live, or more inviting or obvious for them to find, or whatever it may be. But when they were interviewing people, they found out that a big part of it was how clear they were about the pricing. So it ended up being like something as small as just having a sign out the front saying it doesn't cost anything, or this is what the pricing is. Something as small as that actually solved the problem. So when you think about, like, if you hadn't spoken to the people in the community, they may have just designed this amazing clinic that was right near where they all lived or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, just ask people questions and figuring out what goes on for them. Like, they came up with that. So I thought that was amazing. Like, it's such an easy fix.
Yeah. And they could have spent so much money, as you say, on something like building a really nice clinic to attract people to it and have a cool culture. But it's just a simple pop a sign out the front that has the price.
Yeah.
I know that's turned me off purchasing in the past, like, or like engaging in services. Like, if you walk by a shop and you like the product or the service, but it's not upfront what it's about. Like, I know I'm a little bit afraid to go and actually ask, like, how much is this kind of thing? So I know that would help me. Or even if I visit websites and like the price or what I get for that price is not really transparent, as a consumer, they've lost me.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's just interesting. It's just amazing when you ask the audience like what you can come up with.
Yeah.
That you would never know if you didn't like interview them or like find out what it was like for them. So yeah.
I think when you say about the interview there, like, I know for one of our clients recently in the last couple of months, we had to do the induction for them. And like, that's where we went into a big interview process. And I suppose, like, both you and I have facilitated inductions in the corporate world. And so we're quite familiar with like traditional type inductions. But I think, so we went in and we could have had our own view of what it should have looked like. But this client, we were like, well, let's give this whole human-centered design thinking kind of, like, let's get into it and practice it. And so through that process, it really shaped a completely different induction. And so I suppose what we did there was, like, first of all, I went and sat in their induction to really understand, like, what is the experience? What's the content that they're teaching? Who are the different people that come in and facilitate? And then so sitting in on the induction, then afterwards what we did was, like, interview their staff who are sitting in that probation period. So either people that were in their first week, first 3 weeks, or still within that 3-month period, and asking them, look, what was actually important to you when you started in the organization? What was missing? What did you care about? What kind of made you nervous, or whatever it was? And we asked like a series of questions to really understand their context and their world. And the key things that came out of it were, you know, they were nervous. They're starting a new job. So they're like, holy shit, like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. Like, are these people going to like me in my new team? Do I have to bring milk for my coffee? So these are the things that are going through their new starters' minds, you know? So that was one really key kind of aspect. And then it came around to like, how can we make them feel comfortable as soon as possible? And that really shaped the solution of the induction, because it was around, first of all, the I, so all about me, you know, what's important to me. So the topics that came in there were like my start times and clarifying my role expectations with my supervisor. And then part 2 went on to things like things that are in my wider circle that I care about, but I don't care on my first day. So it was things like maybe like salary sacrificing and all that kind of paperwork type thing. And then it went down to the wider ring of, okay, well, who's around me in my branch and what we're about. And then wider again, what do we do as a whole organization? Not just my one department, but what else is going on in this organization? And I think, that whole interview process really kind of just really shaped, and like we got feedback afterwards from people, and we said, look, does this actually help you? What's important to you? And that was feedback from people that sat in the same induction face to face with me, and then new starters who hadn't done an induction at the organization. And they were just like, it was really relevant because I got the information that was important to me. I could go do stuff, meet people, like, because we sent them on quests that helped them meet people in their team and help meet their supervisor early on, so they were able to feel comfortable because they were forced almost to make friends, whereas sometimes traditionally we might be too shy. So it got really good feedback from, in terms of like doing that whole process and actually applying
for sure.
human-centered design. So yeah, I think
Yeah,
that was
I
quite
love that. Yeah, it just makes me think, like, because I've run induction processes in the past, and just thinking about like when we're designing them, you think, oh, I have to tell them about like everything the organization does.
yeah,
Like we have to do the code of conduct, the health and safety, which are all really important things. But like what you said, like when you put yourself in the shoes of the user, like it's their first day, they just want to know where their desk is, how to find a toilet, where to put their lunch. Like it's so true when you think about what they're actually needing on that first day.
yeah,
It can be completely different to what you want to design for or what you think is really important.
yeah,
So yeah, I find that so interesting, and just the way you can split it up over days. So give people the information they need when they need it, and it doesn't have to be all at once.
sorry.
I think that's a really important concept as well. Like you don't have to throw all the information at them at once. Really, just give them what they need when they need it.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true, because it is almost that just in time, but it's really meeting their needs and not just pushing information at them all the time, which is quite cool.
Yeah.
What else stood out to you from the process, and like how we could apply it in the learning space?
I think so, definitely like the inspiration phase, which is where you're discovering like what your learner needs, was really like probably the most interesting part for me. And I think it was, so once like you've got the information that you need, so once you've sort of immersed yourself in your learner's environment and you've done the interviews and you have that understanding, just having a session with your project team and also some of the target audience, I think it's really important to have them there. And I found that really interesting. So rather than you designing it for them, sort of doing a collaboration thing where you have them there with you and you're designing it together, so you know it's going to work, like it's going to be the right solution.
Yeah.
So
are there any examples of like activities that you came up with or heard about for that?
So I think like the main thing was bringing your project team into a room together with the target, some of the users, having sticky notes and just writing out all the insights you've had. So there might be like, even if it's like quotes, so that if a user said a certain quote that really resonated with you, you could write that out. Different themes, might be barriers to what they're trying to learn, or it could be something that's helpful for them. And having like categories, so you could have categories up on the wall and sort of sticking those sticky notes up against those categories. Because then you end up with basically a whole wall that shows you exactly who your user is. And if you've got the user in the room, they can say, oh, that's not quite right, or it should be more like this, and you can really get that really accurate picture of who they are and what their day looks like. I thought that was really interesting and useful, and I think that would be like a really important thing to do at the beginning of projects.
I really like that, and I think also like we're obviously big fans of Kathy Moore and her action mapping.
She's awesome.
But you know how she's always like get the learners in there, get them into the room so that you can actually learn from their perspective. Because even recently with an action mapping workshop we did with a client, you know, they're like, oh, it's social media, we need people to use social media properly, and they've got like freaking so much paperwork and policy, and they're like, this is what it needs to be. And it was interesting because we had SMEs in the room, and then we had just like staff from different levels of hierarchy and different roles around the business, so outside, indoor workers. And when we got into like what does it actually look like, day-to-day actions and behaviors, and then even down to like when we got into the activities and them creating the activities, it was so detached from like their policies and procedures didn't allow you to actually learn based on the activities that they felt they would would happen daily. So for example, it didn't have anything like, one of the things is don't take a photo with you in your uniform because the uniform is quite distinguishable. Or don't have it like your Facebook profile saying I work at this place, because it can be traced back. And it was just really simple, innocent things that people might do but you don't realize the repercussion. And so one of them might be, I don't know, you take a photo of an accident on the way to work and you like just post it to your Facebook because you might want to say, I don't know, like avoid this road because like the traffic's backed up, and you think you're doing the community and your friends a favor. But that link between what actually happens on the day to all the policies and stuff, like, is really interesting. So it was so good to have the actual end users in the room to give that perspective and also push back on those subject matter experts to really go, this is what it looks like in reality. It's all really nice to say, yeah, you've got the policies and procedures, which are great, but like in the moment and this whole disconnect that's going on. So I don't know, I think that's really cool that, you know, you get to have those people and really think that the solutions are way more effective. So yeah, that's cool. What else?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. After that inspiration phase, it goes into the ideation phase. So it's around brainstorming solutions. So once you've got all of that information from your user, you can really start thinking, okay, how might we? And I think that's really important. I know we've spoken about it as well, and you've sort of spoken to me about how that question can be so useful. But just saying, like, how might we solve this problem, whatever the problem is, and using the information that you've got from your user to start answering those questions. So I think that's cool, and a really awesome part of that process as well, which I know we've tried together when we're brainstorming.
Tell us more.
Is how you can, it's so important to brainstorm as many ideas as possible. And I wish I knew this a long time ago, because I can often, when I'm trying to be creative or come up with an answer to a solution, I can get really stuck and try and come up with the one solution that I think is the right one. And really like judge myself and think I'm not allowed to like come up with solutions that are silly or like a bit crazy. But this process really looks at how you can just come up with as many solutions as possible. It doesn't matter how wacky or obvious or silly it may be, and the more that you come up with, the more likely you are to find that perfect solution. And part of that process as well is to only spend, say, 15 to 20 minutes per question, so you can keep your brain really fresh. And sort of giving yourself a timer so you can just come up with as many solutions as possible. Like try and come up with a crazy amount, like tell the group that they have to come up with, say, 30 solutions for this one question in a small amount of time, and just see what you get from that. I think that can be like really effective.
That's cool.
And motivating.
No, it's cool. And I think, do you want to share, remember when we did that activity for the first time, coming up with the ideas, and I think the question was something around how might we improve bullying and harassment incidents in the workplace is where it started. And then you guys, you had your time to like actually get in there and do your ideas, and then to expand that, do you want to, we then said, okay, it was started with like 2 minutes to come up with however many ideas, or 5 minutes, and you guys got like 15 or whatever it was, and then it was like, okay, now pretend you're Apple and go do it again. So do you want to share that experience and what went on for you?
So that initial brainstorm, that we didn't have the information about working for Apple. So it was interesting, because I know we spoke about as well how you can often, like, you come up with solutions, you get stuck, and then you're like, oh gosh, like I have nothing left, like I have no idea what else to say, or like come up. But if you have that timer and you know you at the end you need to talk about what you come up with, you end up thinking all of these things you never thought you'd think of. And all of a sudden, like, you stop and then you go on this other track and you're like, oh gosh, I'm coming up with all these things like I never thought I'd think of. So I found that process really interesting, how if you put that limit, that timer on, and take away that judgment of it has to be like the best answer there is. It's amazing what you can come up with. So that was probably the insight for the first part of the brainstorming. And then it was really interesting, because when you said it was for Apple, like the solutions were so different. Like it's amazing how, like, it was all about like putting it on an app and having like technology, and it just, the way that I was coming up with solutions for them was so different. And when we like looked at the difference at the end, I was like, how amazing is that? Like if I like you think there's a solution and you just come up with the best answers, but something like changing who that solution is for, just changing the company, can have such a big impact on what you actually come up with and what works for them. So it just made me think, like, how often does that happen out in the world where people don't understand their audience and create something that's totally different from what would be most useful for them? Yeah, it's interesting.
That's cool. And it does, I feel like, when you are, it's like you change your state of mind, you change your framing. So almost immediately, with Apple, you're no longer thinking about where you currently work or the current constraints that you're trying to solve the problem with. When you think about Apple, they're obviously like this really massive company and they have huge budgets and revenue and things like that. So your mind expands to, okay, let's get it going. Which is really cool, because even now when I'm like thinking about, oh, imagine if we were doing something for Apple now, I'm like, holy crap, like, oh my God, I can feel my mind racing.
There's so many possibilities.
And it's interesting because there was another book I was reading recently called Think Wrong, and it was about trying to change how you're basically, like, the brain looks for patterns and shortcuts to help you make your life easier, and it was trying to break how that happens. And they have, in the book Think Wrong, they have like a series of kind of activities that you can do, and one of them around the ideation thing is they say, okay, you and 3 people, like, they give you constraints and they go, you and 3 people are now the team and you have to solve this problem. You have $100 and 3 days to do it. And you basically have to come up with this like mission plan. And already you can see that urgency and like the constraints that needs to be done on a budget, and just get it done, tick whatever needs to happen. And I think that's another kind of way. Like, there's lots of things out there in the world that can help expand your mind or restrict it, or just change that state to be able to come up with new ideas and think about it differently, and not have the stagnant thinking that can tend to come naturally from the organization that you're in. And that's why maybe problems haven't been solved in new or innovative ways, and you try to always, you think that's not possible here, or this is the way that we've always done it. So I really definitely recommend those kind of activities to open
for sure. I remember it's sort of reminding me as you're talking, but at a previous workplace that we were at, when we were brainstorming, I remember like we had to come up with, it was like, what if you could do this? And it could be something completely crazy. So it could be like, what if like soft drink came out of the taps in the kitchen, like something crazy like that.
Just, and then like, the next person had to start their sentence with what if. And you kept going around, and it just got very big. That was cool. I like that.
And it's amazing how just like having that, changing that filter to the way you're thinking can, like, you can come up with so much more. And be so much more creative. So I think that's I would definitely recommend using that process. So even as like, if you're facilitating a session, just like setting the tone, and you're like, even yourself coming up with some crazy idea, so the group can be like, oh cool, like we can come up with crazy stuff as well. And it won't necessarily be the right idea, but someone else might be like, oh, like now that you've said that, I've just thought of this, and then that could lead to like the perfect solution, like you would never know.
I think that's really interesting, like, because I went to this event last night, and it was on EdTech, so educational technology. And the guy that was talking was a 17-year-old. And his name, he was so inspirational. It was amazing. His name's Scott Miller. He owns Bop Industries, and it's about bringing technology education workshops into schools and teaching kids STEM, or STEAM, he calls it, with artistic kind of like framing to it as well. But he kind of said, like, we were like, oh, why do you love doing what you do, And he was just like, kids are amazing because they have no limits in their thinking. If you say think blue sky or think what's possible, they go with all these crazy ideas. And he was like, what's the go with like adults? Because obviously we think differently, and we have, I don't know what happens, but instead of going out this way where anything's possible, we start to go down this way. And it was really interesting that he made that observation. And I think, like you just said, as a facilitator, it's really cool if if you can set the standard and be that gobshite yourself, so that people feel more comfortable to kind of get rid of those inhibitions, or like, oh, my idea is going to be stupid, you know, and just go for it, like, because the process is more fun if you do come up with those crazy wacky ideas, have a laugh. And I know we've gone down that track before, and we get a good ab workout when it happens. Oh, it was cool. It was really good.
Yeah, very cool.
What anything else to like on the human-centered design?
I think once you like do that brainstorming phase, I'm just trying to think what else was important to talk about for that stage. I think it is basically just coming up with as many solutions as you can. Yeah. And then something else that I read as well that I found really useful is once you have all of those different solutions, like you can put them up on the wall. So you can have all these ideas and start to group them. So if people have come up with similar solutions or they're all part of the same theme, you can put them into groups on the wall. Yeah. And then after that, you can go through as like in a group discussion, you can sort of vote on which ones you think could be the most useful for the solution. So it's like sort of narrowing down. And it reminds me when we were talking about divergent and convergent thinking.
Oh, yeah.
The other day. Yeah. So like starting off with the divergent thinking where you've got all these ideas and you're coming up with like as much as you can. And then towards the end, sort of using that convergent thinking to sort of narrow down which solutions seem like they will work the best, and testing it with your user. So asking them, does this sound right? Yeah. Or even like implementing it to some level and seeing how it works.
That's cool. Very cool. Anything else that might add value to these guys?
I think the last thing would be just be as creative and don't judge yourself. So just let yourself come up with as much as you can. Make sure that you really understand your user. So whether that means even like, I love the concept of actually not just interviewing them, but actually being a part of their day-to-day life. So if you have the opportunity to shadow them in their role, so like go to meetings with them, go to lunch with them, see exactly how their day plays out. And it's amazing the insights you can get from that just from being in their environment.
Yeah. It's like you're a fly on the wall, hey? Like observing them in the behavior, and you can find out where the errors or what makes their life hard. And that's cool.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think as well, like stories. So finding out from people what stories they have, because stories can be so powerful. So if you've got stories from your user around what their experience is or what their challenges are, using those in the design process can be really insightful. Yeah. So I think that would be the top tips. But obviously, like, it's such a massive process. Yeah. In terms of like, there's so much to it, and on the IDEO website, there's so many tips and tricks for each stage of the process. So I would probably just say, like, if you are interested, I would definitely check out that website just because there's so much there and everyone's going to be interested in different parts. Yeah. But yeah, it's so useful. It's definitely a process I am super excited about, and I think it adds so much value. So yeah.
Awesome.
That's it, I reckon.
Yeah, I think we'll end it there. So if you guys have made it to the end of the video, thank you for watching. We really appreciate that, and I hope that it has added value to you. We are Belvista Studios, and we're an e-learning and instructional design studio, and basically we put things out there like this to kind of help ourselves improve, because we always have to challenge and kind of keep up with what's going on. And when you put things out to the world like this, I think people call it working out loud. You know, you're really accountable because anyone in the world can see this stuff and really criticize you. So I think, you know, it's a really good challenge for us to be at the top of our game by putting things out like this. So thank you guys for being part of the community, and maybe see you in another video if we feel confident after this one. Okay, bye.